Hello, it's Gary Mizell again from our remote location. I'm here to talk to you about something that has been, I guess, the most important subject that I have tried to introduce unsuccessfully for most of my life. For 45 years, I have tried to introduce the subject of psychographics. I first learned about psychographics in 1977 on the campus of the University of Oklahoma in Norman, Oklahoma. On Parrington Oval, we had the journalism department, and when you're in graduate school, in order to write your thesis, I guess you would call it, you have to do a lot of studying and preparation. So they gave us some material to look at, and so I went to the library at the University of Oklahoma and I studied quite a bit. I was sent to the University of Oklahoma by my mother's boyfriend, Colonel Irvin M. Kent, who was the leading appellate attorney in Denver, an absolute genius, and my mother's boyfriend. And he was dedicated to me because he was in love with my mother, and my mother loved anybody that would help her son. And so he gave me a tremendous amount of attention. He suggested that I go to the University of Oklahoma because it was a state school and I could pay $2,500 a semester to get my education. So for $10,000, I got a master's degree in 1977 in professional writing, which is journalism. But you should understand that I've been in surveillance since 1971, so anything that I do is being captured by the intelligence agencies. So just to give you an example of how that works, in 1978, I entered into psychotherapy because my mother was dying, and she said, when I pass away, which she did August 18th, 1977, when I pass away, I want you to get into psychotherapy to get over the depression that you're going to feel from losing me. And so Irv, having educated me and sent me to the University of Oklahoma, was sending me round-trip tickets to come home to my mother's place over the weekend, and he would lecture me on the current paper that I was writing, like Persuasion in the Media. He would get out his pipe and he would lecture into an audio cassette player for 30 minutes, and then he would send me the material. And this was all being observed by the intelligence agencies. So when I got into psychotherapy after my mother's death, there was a woman in my psychotherapy group. She was a beautiful black woman named Carolyn Bond. So we were in group therapy together, and she talked about her husband, Bruce Bond, because she was having marital problems, not anything to do with fidelity, but to do with secrecy. Her husband wouldn't share anything with her, and so it turned out that Bruce Bond was a CIA agent. And it turned out that Carolyn Bond was sent to my psychotherapy group because I learned about it from Colonel Kent. Colonel Kent was in my psychotherapy group. The psychiatrist was Lawrence D. Lacob, Larry Lacob, and his wife's name was Carol. So my cousin Larry Mizell of the CIA, the person who has powered himself up through the intelligence agencies, his wife's name was Carol. So Larry A. Mizell, founder and chairman, MDC Holdings, New York Stock Exchange, is basically built his entire company from the CIA. And his wife's name was Carol. So my psychiatrist, Lawrence D. Lacob in Denver, Colorado, his alma mater was Johns Hopkins University. So when I completed my television show, 21 episodes where 80% of my guests were black, as I was looking for sponsorship, I got a call from Time Warner Cable in Baltimore, of all places. I never heard of them. And I knew who Ted Turner was, but I didn't know anything about an office in Baltimore. So Time Warner Cable told me that if I submitted my 21 episodes of cultural, business, and entertainment, they would play my show all over the state of Maryland, which they did. Larry Meisel claimed that that was his TV show. He made a deal with Ted Turner, the billionaire, and Larry Meisel is a billionaire. And so the purpose of my show playing all over the state of Maryland was to bring Mike Bloomberg here from Baltimore. So then Bloomberg comes here and he is the mayor, and he makes $2 billion a year every year as the mayor. And that's how Bloomberg was powered up, and that was just another Larry Meisel experiment and deployment of the CIA. So when I joined this psychotherapy group, I had the CIA there too. And then Bloomberg is a CIA career. The CIA is basically taking over the United States. And this is all happening through Larry Meisel. So it's important to understand psychographics so that these events can be explained and understood, because there's no such thing as the supernatural. There's no such thing as there not being a reason for everything that takes place. There's a reason for everything. And there's no such thing as the supernatural, because you cannot codify any scientific event by saying that you can't prove it experimentally. I don't believe in the supernatural. Everything in the supernatural, if it's real, if it's scientific, it can be proven, it can be subject to experimentation. So it's very important to understand that all of my efforts to introduce psychographics have been stultified by the intelligence agencies, because this is really, I believe, the most important and potentially damaging aspect of the media. This is the last thing in the world that they want to see reporters practicing in the mainstream media. So what is psychographics? In studying for my master's degree, two things were prominent in my studies. One was the assertion that corporate America would become consolidated, and that the creation of the general A through Z corporation was going to take place. And that's exactly what has happened in today's world. I'm a broker-dealer, and I have watched 56 separate media organs owned by 56 securities entities be consolidated into 6, especially Tribune Broadcasting, which came about as a result of Sinclair Oil. Harry Sinclair was the founder and chairman of Sinclair Oil. That was one of the 7 sisters founded in Spindletop in Beaumont, Texas in 1920. That strike founded all the major oil companies. So Sinclair diversified from oil to broadcasting. So that's how you have Tribune, which has the majority of these media organs under its umbrella. Then they said that what is always missing from the media is psychographics. One way of avoiding the attempt to denude American democracy and replace it with fascism is controlling the media and controlling the dialectic, and making sure that whatever reporters talk about cannot really be expanded to a total understanding of the subject matter. So therefore, it's essential that we start practicing psychographics, and I am looking for a partner, a woman in the advertising field or in journalism. I have a BA in advertising. I have an MA in journalism from the University of Oklahoma. My BA in advertising is from Tulsa University. I'm watching the advertisers now take over the mainstream media. The mainstream media was organized by my membership in the Colorado Hispanic Media Association, where we were meeting with ABC, CBS, and NBC on a monthly basis in their community affairs department, and the CIA organized the mainstream media through me. Then they started powering up the advertisers to make sure that the advertisers were controlling the programming in the mainstream media. So you're not going to get a multi-billion-dollar contract with the auto manufacturers, the pharmaceuticals, or the insurance companies unless you follow the programming guidelines of the advertisers. So they're controlling the mainstream media because the effort to roll back American democracy is upon us now. So I'm looking for a woman with a background in journalism or advertising where we can do vignettes, produce vignettes, and practice and teach the science of psychographics. So as I said at the outset here, nothing happens without a reason. There's a reason for everything. And there's no such thing as a supernatural. Therefore, when these mass murders take place, there's a mass murder every day in America. There have been, we've gone through 11 and a half months, and so that's 330 some days, and there have been 660 mass murders, so that's 2 mass murders a day. And it's impossible to understand things like the motive of these people, because like in most cases, the motive for much of what takes place, especially in a criminal world, is psychological and sociological and pathological. There are so many psychopaths and sociopaths in the Army, and that is where most of them accumulate. So keep in mind that mass murder and fascism and military and all of these murderous events, this is a male thing. This is a male-dominated kind of effort to control societies. And we're in a period of time now where autocracy is installing itself or being installed in many, many countries all over the world now. We are now fighting for democracy, which I consider to be the most important movement in human history. And also, if you look at the creators of the universe, which I've talked about in the past, nothing in outer space is going to settle for autocracy, because you're talking about different galaxies, you're talking about thousands of thoughts and the dark matter and fragments that go with them. They're not going to take orders from one person. And so much of the atmosphere now in our environment between the Earth and the Moon, there are probably 1,000 entities with bodies composed of dark matter encapsulating consciousness, which is thought. And they are not going to accept fascism. One of the reasons that they came to this planet in the first place was because of the Greek discovery of, or the Greek deployment, or the Greek invention of democracy. This is what's popular in outer space. And if you start converting the Earth into a fascist nation, into a fascist planet, starting with the United States, which is the bastion of freedom throughout the world, you're going to end up in a situation where they're going to want to destroy the Earth in order to not take orders from autocrats. So what I've been doing with my influence over the entities that are dominant in the universe, is to convince them that if worse comes to worse, bring male dominance to an end one way or the other, and make this a women-controlled and led world. The purpose of lesbianism and transgender is for a lesbian, it's to experience love from a woman's method of showing love. As far as transgender people, you're looking at a situation where the male gender could literally come to an end. And there has to be a way of impregnating women so that the human race can continue. And that's the role of transgender people. Now, I don't know how this is going to come across, because of what I'm talking about is filled with stigmatization. But I'm a scientist, and I am the world's foremost astrophysicist. I know what's out there. I've been to the edges of the portals of the universe. I know exactly what the thinking is out there. And that's what the thinking is. So I have really devoted the last 20 years, and especially the last 2 or 3, to saving the Earth. They really were going to drive an asteroid into this planet, and the orbit that the Earth has between Mars and Venus would have been a molten asteroid field where the bodies of every mammal on this planet would have been destroyed, and the consciousness of all humanity and most of mammal life would have been sucked into 14 other moons that are competing with the Earth to be the dominant life form in the universe. So my contribution is to have saved the Earth from this potential fate. And now, in order to save men, in order to save the male gender, you must master psychographics. You must understand there's a reason for everything. And what psychographics is the underlying psychological, sociological reason for all behavior. There's no such thing as no reason. Nothing happens without a reason, and much of what happens on our planet is man-made. You have to understand, what is the reason for going to war? What is the reason for a mass murder? What is the reason for rape? What is the reason for cruelty? Also, what is the reason for a Mother Teresa? What is the reason for the Dalai Lama? What is the reason for all behavior? What you buy at the store, what kind of car you buy, there's always a psychological underpinning for all human behavior, and nobody thinks about these things because the media doesn't teach you this. The media does not practice psychographics. In a newspaper, a headline should be followed by a psychological, sociological subtitle explaining the psychographics of that headline. Every headline is created to draw your attention. They want you to read this article, which is always filled with facts. But facts are never followed by, they're never explained by the psychological reasons that these things take place. I'm looking forward to having a mate where we can start producing vignettes and demonstrating by personal intercommunications how psychographics works, because time is growing short. The next presidential election is coming about in 11 months. The U.S. Army has been preparing the CIA and the other intelligence agencies and our 800 military bases in 172 countries all over the world. The U.S. Army is going to make an attempt to take over America and the rest of the world, because if you look at a general, if you think in terms of how a general thinks, it's all about military strategy. Jimmy Carter's advisor, his security advisor, was Zbigniew Brzezinski. If you buy his book, The Grand Chessboard, Zbigniew Brzezinski is a philosopher, and all of his philosophy is about dominance. It's about how the world is going to be dominated, and of course, it's all based on men, and it's all based on things like oil, and it's all based on cultural history. I read that book, and it was chilling to see how this military mind operates. You cannot have the Army and any kind of a military source making social decisions involving your government and your country. This is why we have wars going on all over the world. There's never peace initiatives because we don't know how to do that. Every one of these 800 military bases that we have should have a media liaison. And the media liaison, their job will be to implant articles in newspapers and magazines and whatever language is being communicated in that particular country where we're operating. We are going to try to influence people through marketing and public relations and images. They're starting to do that in the media now. I'm directing the mainstream media in that way. And you're seeing it here in America for the first time. And it's product driven. This is something that absolutely must take place. We are creating terrorist groups. Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hamas, all of these groups have as their underlying psychological foundation generation after generation of U.S. fighters going into their countries and murdering their grandparents and their parents. They have lost generations of parenting and love and whatever security and internal foundations parenting brings. And it's all replaced by hostility. Hostility toward America, hostility toward Israel, hostility toward the military, because we went over there after Chevron discovered oil in Saudi Arabia. We've been destabilizing these governments for years, creating people like the Shah of Iran and our favorite kind of dictators to keep the Middle East always in conflict so we can enter into all these governments and suck their oil away. We don't pay much for the oil that we steal. And, the greatest acquisition of oil reserves is when Exxon purchased Mobil, where Mobil's reserves were $9 a barrel. The only thing that you can look at that has any kind of reasonable comparison is how we acquired all this oil in the Middle East. We acquire a government, and with that government comes oil leases, and then, we have the oil service industry, Halliburton, Schlumberger, Prairie producing. These companies represent big oil. You can't have the chairman of Exxon, although Rex Tillerson was Trump's Secretary of State. But generally speaking, the big oil doesn't want to play that role in government because it's too obvious what they want to do. So it's the oil service industry that represents the oil industry. So during the Bush administration, Dick Cheney was the chairman of Halliburton, and Halliburton was making laws and basically running the Bush administration. George Bush's 8 years of being president was really the Dick Cheney years, and he was doing everything that Cheney wanted because Cheney was working for the oil industry. So all these wars, the war in Iraq, all these things that we did, getting even for 9/11 by slaughtering all these people in Iraq and grabbing oil reserves, this is creating hostility. Hamas is going to be much bigger now that we're We murdered 15,000 innocent Palestinians in Israel in order to destroy Hamas's tunnels. Hamas is an example of the kind of hate groups that we create by slaughtering generations of people in the Middle East. So they think they're putting Hamas to an end by flooding their tunnels, killing a lot of the hostages, because Bibi Netanyahu is a psychopath who was installed there by Larry Meisel. Donald Trump is a similar kind of psychopath who has already stated that he plans on running America like an autocrat. So both of these people were installed by Larry Meisel. He sent his two kids to Trump's alma mater. He followed George Herbert Bush into the White House in 1988. Bush was head of the CIA. I have observed all of these things, and I'm trying to save our societies. I'm trying to save our civilizations. I'm trying to save the male gender. And I'm trying to make a better world for all of us. And really the only missing element is psychographics. So I don't know how long I've been talking exactly. So I'm not sure exactly how much time I have left. But it looks like from our cinematographer here, I have 4 minutes to wrap up. So I want you to take this extremely seriously. What's missing in the mainstream media is psychographics, and it involves creating a brand new language, a written language, a spoken language. The field of journalism draws the best and the brightest of us in our society. And the best and the brightest have got to start practicing psychographics. They have to start explaining the psychological and sociological underpinning of all of the behavior that creates the headlines. We have the talent, we have the ability. I'm going to start on these vignettes as soon as possible. But just keep in mind that America has created these hate groups from stealing oil, destabilizing governments, and slaughtering generations of people in the Middle East. We blame these governments for their hate and hostility that we created in the first place. And Hamas will be 100 times bigger now that we've slaughtered 15,000 innocent Palestinians, because Israel wanted to be able to control the Palestinians and not give them their own state. So they've been living in a stateless world. It's the most dense population in the world. They don't have services. And now, after paying that price of not even having a culture or a government, and now 15 to 16,000 people murdered in the most densely populated region of the world in order to destroy Hamas, when in reality it's going to make Hamas 10 times bigger. This has got to come to an end. I'm going to bring every resource that I have, because I have a connection to all of the dark matter that is surrounding this planet, and preparing to connect to the human species. But we're in a real crisis, and if you don't want a world where transgender people are going to be doing all the impregnating, the food supply has already been entered into by these entities in consciousness, because they recognize what the problem is. So I love children, and I love girls and boys, but when a boy becomes 12 years old, then testosterone starts being excreted, and that turns the young boy into a man, and these men, our gender, me, the likes of which, are being trained by other men. And the answer to social problems is not war. It's not military decisions. We have to have women generals. We have to have social experiments and social organization taken away from the military and put into the media. Women in the media are the government. The media is the government, because we need to expand our media into 172 countries all over the world where we have military bases. So I understand that my time is coming to an end, that I have a matter of seconds to wrap up. So I hope that I made an impression, because I'm going to be spending the rest of my life trying to perfect and install the science of psychographics so that we can have a healthy evolution, so that males and females can coexist peacefully and bring absolutely an end to war and the need for a military. Thank you for listening. I hope you will practice these insights.